the Temple of Zeus. I swear I must have been something like him in another life. I must be. I mean, look at me. Anyway. Hello, my darlings. This is Speaker's Corner once again, and I am its host, and yours, Tim Byron. Oh, it's that time of year again. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and you know what that means? Love is in the air. The annual rite of passage from freezing off one's bollocks to, I suppose, putting them in use. Baby. For those of us who have them, anyway. We go from winter to nigh spring as life begins to emerge from its slumber and rouse itself into the procreative phase of existence. Well then, oh dear, gentle viewers, it is a time of amour, of sensuality and intimacy. So why not have major corporations take advantage of this moment to capitalize all this effusive outpourings into making some money, eh? Even though we know that love is essentially a stream of endorphins, neurochemicals, blah, 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 kicking in at the right time and place to give one that sensation of, oh, darling, now I have the dithers. Right, that will likely be a topic for another day. The chemistry of love, that is. But today we will focus on that age-old adage, love is blind. Technically, the endorphins and whatnot do help explain blind love, but no. We will look at the mythological origin of that cliché. Why that phrase? Especially considering it's Valentine's Day? Of course, Cupid! That whittle cutesy wee bairn shooting his arrows at everyone to cause them to fall in love. So adorable. And depraved, really, if one starts to read some of the mythological pairings his quiver caused, but that could be a topic for another day. That chubby little cherub is the symbol for Valentine's Day, due to that superpower of his. But his story is also pertinent to the subject at hand. Cupid is one of the Roman gods of love and is an offshoot to the Greek Eros, whose parent is Aphrodite in some of the stories, but sometimes he has no parents. Either way, for the purposes of today's story, Cupid and Eros are fairly interchangeable because the point still stands. Right then, Cupid was off doing his thing, which Hesiod described as Cupid, quote, loosens the limbs and weakens the mind, unquote, when he came upon a woman named Psyche. Yes, just like that term you know and love, which is Greek for soul. Eros, more commonly known as his Roman variant, the cherubic Cupid.
Oh, you dirty bagger, who you calling cherubic, you bastard?
Hush you. You see, not actually come upon Psyche as his mother, for all intents and purposes in this story, is Aphrodite, told the god of love that he needed to strike Psyche with one of his arrows, hitting her just as if she were looking at the most disgusting man possible. You see, Psyche was a well-fit bird. She got all them lads to take a peep at her. She weren't actually not just any well-fit bird, but the most fittest bird that ever fit. Right. Aphrodite, much like, well, all the gods, is quite envious, so she could not deign to acknowledge that someone were prettier than her, and wanted to inflict suffering upon poor Psyche, through no fault of her own. Thus, she sent her son to pluck an arrow and make the gorgeous young lass fall in love with the first homely creature she should encounter. One would think that immortality would grant one some semblance of understanding and kindness, but I suppose that the older one gets, the more curmudgeon-y one becomes in general, no? Extrapolate that out to millennia, and well, Cupid / Eros did as his mother bid, and spotted Psyche one day. He pulled an arrow from his quiver, but whoopsie-daisy, he dropped his arrow on his own foot. What a clumsy daft deity you must be saying to yourself. He caught a glimpse of her, and so stunning was her beauty that he lost concentration, that he dropped the arrow. So in consequence, and in essence, he fell in love with her, because he had already fallen in, quote, love, unquote, with her. Does that make sense? It's a myth. They don't always have to make sense. Either way, the god of love had a real bloody dilemma on his hands. He was an immortal, but in love with a mortal. Not just any immortal, but the ruddy god of love. How could he, of all creatures, fall in love, let alone with some mortal? That wasn't the only problem this pair of non-lovers faced. Psyche was so drop-dead gorgeous that no man wanted to marry her, which was distressing for her father. I know. These were very different times, ladies and gents. A girl's worth back then was, in no small part, due to the type of man she could marry. Now this was a problem for her father, on whom she still relied, so he decided to take her to the Temple of Zeus. I swear I must have been something like him in another life. I must be. I mean, look at me. Anyway, Zeus came down from the clouds when he wasn't doing Zeusy things to prophesy Psyche's father that she would one day marry a demon. Eek! Ooh, that ostensibly did not deter her father, for he left her on a mountain on a moonless night, which was prime demon time. I mean, really. Who should approach poor, frightened young Psyche on that night but... That's right, well guessed, ladies and gents, Cupid. However, it was completely dark, and Cupid did not want Psyche to see him, as I guess he'd be instantly recognizable, wouldn't he? Nevertheless, he took her up to a lavish palace in the clouds where she still could not see him. Right, black as tar, in an opulent palace in the clouds. Anyway, he told her that she could never behold his face for fear of his mother. Yikes, ladies. If a man tells you that nowadays, run a mile, run 10 miles. He also relayed to her that should she see his face, that he would abandon her. And you thought it was bad when your lift gets there late. Imagine being stuck in the clouds with no way to get down. Now, it was too late to do anything, because apparently taking a woman to one's palace in the clouds is an instant marriage certificate, so poor Psyche was stuffed either way. Cupid visited his now wife Psyche night after night in his palace, which is, well, a euphemism for you can guess what. They were married, after all, you prudes. All the while, she never caught a glimpse of his face, but she assumed that he had beautiful features from the time she could touch it. His face, people, for goodness sake, honestly. You were so prudish just a second ago, and that's where your mind goes, for goodness sake. She believed that he was a demon, but at least a really attractive demon, so there was that. Sounds like 80% of Hollywood, doesn't it? Oh, hello, darlings. I have a new show coming out shortly that I must ask you to watch, where I have these bloody massive horns on my head. Ta-ta, dears. Just having a spot of fun with the old sport. This relationship continued for some time as Cupid kept visiting Psyche every night in this fashion, until one day her sisters suggested something. Psyche was despondent, being alone in this massive, opulent palace on her own, and requested that her sisters pay her a visit, which Cupid granted. Psyche's sisters were intensely jealous of her beauty. Gee, Mythology, can you give these women, any women in these stories, some sense of profundity or character that isn't some bland archetype? They were also envious of the grand treatment Psyche's husband was giving her, so they were trying to trick the naive young lass into catching a glimpse of her Cupid's face. They told her to take an oil and light as he slept, so that she could see who her husband was. They also said to bring a knife because, just in case he were an ugly old demon, that she should behead him. That escalated rather quickly, don't you think? In a sense, love was already blind, as Psyche had yet to see Cupid's face, but this is where it takes a turn. She did as her sisters instructed, and saw the most handsome of gods, Cupid, the deity of love himself. Sort of. You know what I mean. He truly was instantly recognizable, and she gasped. However, her husband was now waking due to this massive bright light in his face, and knocked some of the lamp's hot oil into his eyes. Love was literally blind at that point, but he still had his senses, and she grovelled at him not to leave her as he promised he would. He did so, which greatly saddened poor Psyche as she awoke in a field on her own. So she set off on a journey to find her wayward husband. She eventually discovered that he was living with his mother. Good Lord, this really is like a reality show, isn't it? If you recall, his mother is Aphrodite, and she set a series of impossible tasks for her daughter-in-law to accomplish, should she ever want to see her husband again, for only the second time? The first task was to sort a massive pile of mixed grains into separate piles. The young lady exasperated and sighed, but fret not. Cupid appeared and ordered some ants to do it for her. Isn't that handy? Aphrodite appeared the next day and rightly accused her of having help, but nonetheless assigned her the next task. The second task was to cut some wool from a herd of a special flock of sheep across a nearby river. These were ornery sheep that didn't enjoy it when someone gave them a trim, so the god of that river, recall that Greeks had gods and creatures for everything, absolutely everything, gave her the hack. Wait until the sheep cross the river, when they'll be sleepy, and it will be a dawdle to give them a shear. Huzzah! It worked, but Aphrodite once again rightly accused Psyche of having some assistance. The third task was to get a cup full of water from the river Styx, which came down from a cascade at an incredible height. Psyche knew she couldn't do this, but aha! Along came an eagle and filled the cup for her. Now, the following day, and you can guess what happened. No? I will tell you. So, the goddess of love, who was anything but at this point, gave her the final task. Get a box of magic makeup from Persephone, the queen of the underworld. After a brief tryst with suicide, due to her despair at not being able to accomplish this task, a voice gave her a detailed instructions on how to get the box, a sort of IKEA construction set on divine makeup kit getting. The most important instruction, by far, was not to open the box, but well, you can already guess what happened. There was nothing inside the box, unlike the suitcase in Pulp Fiction, but this darkness caused Psyche to fall into the deepest of slumbers. Cupid then appeared and woke his bride, telling her that she should take the box to Aphrodite, and that he would handle the rest. He went to Olympus and implored Zeus to accept Psyche as one of the immortals due to his profound love for her, and, well, knowing Zeus, he would not have been adverse to some eye candy. Now this worked. So Cupid brought his bride up to the realm of the gods, where she drank ambrosia and joined the immortals. There it is, the innocent king cherub shooting his arrows at whomever he pleased, and we have no say in matters of the heart, now do we? Love is blind. Oh, look at the time. It passes ever so quickly with you, my dears. I will be back next week with another episode. The sweet smell of love is in the air. It hangs, and you can almost pluck it. Or is that chocolate? Of course, I haven't forgotten. I owe you advice. I love you. I love you. So I have a few surprises in store for you and your loved ones. Please, 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 as always, subscribe, like, comment, ring that bell. Gets me so worked up. And until next time, ladies and gents, this was Speaker's Corner with Tim Byron. That's me. Please do comment, share, subscribe, as I said, all that jazz. Pip, pip, cheerio, and until next week, much love. And here's looking at you, kid. Hello again, my lovelies. Thank you so much for watching that video. It really means a lot. Well, what can I say? Keep the smile going. Do remember to subscribe, ring that bell. It helps out like you wouldn't believe. It just makes me so happy. You can see this big smile of mine. Keep calm, carry on, keep a stiff upper lip, and if you like, there are some other channels in the description. I apologise for their content, but I think they're worth a watch, probably. If anything, just to educate yourself. Best of the British to you. Pip pip, cheerio. And don't forget to subscribe. Till next time, this was Speaker's Corner. Ta-ra.